It's been 8 years since the release of the GH4, and 5 years ago the GH5 became one of the most popular Micro Four Thirds cameras for filmmaking. And now, finally, the GH6 is here. Looking at what the GH4 and GH5 did in the filmmaking community, this has to be special. And in this video, we're gonna reveal the improvements, the specs, and also test it out as a solo camera. And what happens if you bring it to a real film production using cine lenses. So, get yourself ready and enjoy. Panasonic sent us the camera some weeks ago to test it out, and it's been very exciting, I would say. And a bit difficult to not tell anyone about the specs. But now, we can finally reveal them. The Panasonic Lumix GH6 has a brand new 25 megapixel sensor, and the camera has twice as fast processing power than the GH5, and this leads to several benefits which I will come back to. It can shoot with a dynamic range of 13 plus stops in Vlog with a feature called Dynamic Range Boost. The GH6 can shoot in true Vlog as opposed to the GH5, which could only shoot in Vlog lights. It can do 4K 120 FPS in 10-bit 420 and 5.7K up to 60p in 10-bit 420, and it can do 5.7K ProRes in both 422 and 422 HQ. So, due to faster processor power, the autofocus is much better, and we have tested this in this video. We'll come back to that. In addition to testing out the built-in stabilizer with impressive 7.5 stops, we'll test out the low-light performance as well. Even the preamplifier is upgraded for better sound. So this is going to be very interesting for us filmmakers. The body itself is a bit bigger than the GH5. One of the reasons is the new fan, which helps cooling down the camera, resulting in unlimited recording in any format. The camera can use both CF Express cards Type B and SD cards for recording. The most heavy recording formats requires CF Express cards. The USB-C connection will let you record directly to SSD drives in a firmware update coming soon. It has a full HDMI as the GH5, which is great. What's new in this camera is that it can record 4 sound channels. For example, by combining the XLR adapter you can get for the GH cameras and the 3.5mm inputs. And the GH6 has its own sound info button at the top, giving you fast access to sound settings. Let's bring it out for our first test shoot, and what isn't better than to use the ultimate GH setup, the Metabone speed booster and the Sigma 18-35mm lens. This setup has been my favorite since the release of the GH4 8 years ago, and we still have it. And what's good about it is that you can both shoot 18mm, so a bit wide, and also 35, a bit tele. And also we get aperture 1.2 because of the speed booster, and you can also get crispy sharp images even though it's aperture 1.2 because of the good glass inside this lens. But it doesn't have a stabilizer, so will this camera be able to stabilize our shots and still make this a killer setup? Let's test it out. Okay, we are outside with Alejandra Tabita.
Hi!
You probably know her from the music video we made in Making a Film Company. It's very sunny today, so it's going to be a lot of contrasts. With the dynamic booster on, we have to shoot at the minimum 2000 ISO. Even though we have the variable ND on, and I put it on max, it's still too bright on this opera house because it's just too bright. So what I'm going to do now is to shoot without the dynamic booster at the opera house, but then we get to another place where it's a little bit more dark. We're going to put the dynamic booster on, and we can also see the difference. With the dynamic booster off, you can go down to 250 ISO, which I think we have to do now. Okay, are you ready?
I'm ready.
You know, you can always use the viewfinder. It's great for when it's really bright. But at the same time, you know, it is quite, the screen becomes quite small. So when focusing in these conditions, it's a bit hard. So I just put the peaking on maximum. It helped me a little bit. But definitely for a shoot like this, I would have like an extra monitor with a really nice focus peaking on. But you just have to shoot a lot, and then some of the shots gets in focus, and then you use that.
Caught by a feeling, goes beyond the right or wrong, gets me what I want. I'm hanging by a string, gotta get up on my feet, get to what I need, and I am flying through the streets on neon wings.
So the first impression of the footage was very good. The colors looked natural, I liked the contrasts, and also it was crispy sharp. Being able to zoom in digitally in 4K 120 FPS creates a lot of possibilities and interesting moving shots like this. However, this requires things to be in focus. Since the Sigma 8-35mm doesn't have autofocus during video, I had to do it manually. Like this shot, which I was quite happy with. Or was it just luck? I don't use autofocus unless I film myself, but I know a lot of people have been waiting to see how well this camera performs in autofocus. So let's test it out. I brought with me the Panasonic lens with autofocus and stabilization. The camera also offers a bunch of autofocus settings with animal detection, face detection, etc. And I just used the default settings for this shoot. I couldn't notice any blurry shots, even though I was zooming in, shaking the camera and moving around. It did an impressive work. Wow, that's a huge upgrade from the GH5.
Up. But I don't think you can conclude with the autofocus being good just by shooting some stuff on an opera house and it seems like it's locked on. We need to compare it, and I'm comparing now to the Alpha 1 from Sony, which is, state-of-the-art autofocus system. Sony, Canon being top of the line here. Panasonic been always lagging behind because they've been, keeping on to their contrast-based system with depth by deep focus. I'm not going to go too much into details here, but it's proven to be much worse than the face detection autofocus system that you're seeing on other cameras. And what's so nice about face detection autofocus is that the Sony can kind of know if something is behind or in front of the focus plane. And this means that it doesn't have to kind of hunt as much. And that's what we've seen with the GH line, that it's hunting for focus while shooting video. So you see these bokeh balls behind me here. At least on older Panasonic cameras, you would see those getting smaller and bigger when it's hunting for focus.
Both of the cameras had similar autofocus settings with both sensitivity and speed about in the middle. I did also turn the lights off to make things a little bit more challenging for the cameras, and clearly Sony handled this situation much better.
Oh, the Panasonic is struggling a bit.
To try to get rid of this hunting, I also tried to turn the sensitivity and speed way down, but unfortunately the result was quite similar. Even though the Sony is clearly better here, I find that there are very few situations where the GH6's autofocus would not be good enough, at the same time that the production is not so professional that they didn't use a manual focus or a focus puller, if that makes sense. If the extra autofocus performance you get from competitors is a deal breaker for the GH6, it's up to you to decide.
We will also compare the autofocus with the GH5 a bit later in this video. Then the stabiliser, which has 7.5 stops of stabilization, and this is a huge upgrade from the GH5. The stabilization truly helped me on set, since I was moving around and using the Sigma lens without the stabilization. To the left you can see a moving shot using the Sigma lens, and it's only my own arms and the built-in stabilizer helping me out here. And to the right, I added the warp stabilizer in post. I know what you're thinking, it helps shooting in 120 FPS, making it look a lot smoother. But when we moved to a new location, I filmed this in 25 FPS. And this is with the warp stabilizer added. Again, this is with a lens that doesn't have stabilizer built in, so I'm really happy so far.
I also tested out the in-body image stabilization, the IBIS, on the GH6 compared to the Sony A1. The Micro Four Thirst cameras from Panasonic and Olympus has been dominating in this field for a while, and it is safe to say from my test that the GH6 is crushing the Sony A1 when it comes to stabilizing. Both of the cameras were using IBIS only in this test and not lens stabilization in addition.
Okay, so in this new location I could test out the dynamic boosts. Again, this feature gives you 13 plus stops of dynamic range by combining a low gain and a high gain. The low gain is ISO 2000 in the dark parts and ISO 200 in the highlights. So you have to shoot at the minimum of 2000 ISO in V-Log. This is shot in 4K 120 FPS, where dynamic booster is not possible, probably due to the high processing power this requires. And this is shot in 5.7K ProRes with dynamic booster on. The sky is exposed the same in both shots, a bit burned out. Now let's turn down the brightness in post. As you can see, the shot with dynamic boost on performed a lot better, making it a lot easier to grade in post. Regarding battery time, this shoot lasted for about 2 hours, and I had the camera on for about 95% of the time, shooting in heavy formats and stabilization that requires a lot of processing power. The battery got empty just after the shoot, so a bit over 2 hours. So far, so good. We're gonna bring this camera to a professional shoot as well, but first, how is this compared to the GH5? How much better is it in, for example, low light? Well, let's test it out. In this test, we also have the GH3, and that is for you, Victor Bart. The GH4 is dedicated to Morten, who introduced me to this camera 8 years ago. And the GH5 is for you, Caleb Pike. I don't know why, I just thought about you. As you can see, the GH3 and GH4 has quite the same size. The GH5 is bigger, and the GH6 is slightly bigger than the GH5, around 100 grams heavier. Okay, let's shoot some low light shots. Okay, first off is the GH5 with ISO 12800, which is the maximum, and noise reduction is set to -5, so it's actually turned off. And here's the GH6 with the same ISO, and also noise reduction turned off. In the GH5 you turn off the noise reduction by going down to -5, in the GH6 it's called 0. And just for fun, this is the GH4 with the highest ISO possible, and this is the GH3. Here you can see the noise reduction turned off versus turned on. Here you can see the difference on the GH6 from noise reduction turned off and on full blast. The GH6 footage you just saw was shot in 5.7K. Is that the reason why it's so much better? This is in 4K all-eye 400 megabits, just as the GH5. And as you can see, it's still a lot better. And here I pulled down the ISO to 2000. Just look how the GH6 can keep the colors even though it's ISO 12800, while the GH5 becomes quite green in high ISO. And here is the GH3 and GH4 as well, without noise reduction, ISO 2000. Then I turned on the dynamic booster on the GH6 and underexposed the shots. What happens then if you drag up the brightness in post? Very interesting. Okay, let's compare the autofocus. We're using the exact same lens and settings. Here's a quick stabilizing test. Just look at the autofocus on the GH6. This is the sound from the GH6. I'm standing 1 meter away. We're using the Rode VideoMic Pro. This is the GH5. I'm standing 1 meter away. We're using the Rode VideoMic Pro. And the Rode VideoMic Pro is on 20 decibels plus, with the plus 20 decibels on the microphone, and minus 12. And in the camera it's minus 18, right, Matthias? Okay.
Good.
And this is the internal microphone of the GH6. I'm standing 1 meter away. And now we are using the internal microphone of the GH5. It probably sounds pretty bad.
Okay, so we just took a break. It's going really great. Stabilization works really well. The sensor stabilization with these cine lenses, and yeah, I think this is going to be really cool.
I'm not weak. I'm a man with discipline. I'm a man with strength. I'm a goddamn warrior! Now get the fuck out of my life! No, 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 no!
Wow, okay, so that was intense, but yeah, I think we got it.
Pack your shit. We're going on a trip.
I would definitely say that the GH6 lived up to my expectations, and maybe even over my expectations with the new firmware updates coming. I don't see any drawbacks with the camera. The only thing that could be better, of course, was that the dynamic booster could be available for every formats and frame rates, but I really understand why it's not possible in all the frame rates, because of the hardware. You can use the old batteries from the GH5 and GH4, that's great, but then you can't record in the highest formats, such as 5.7K ProRes. And to be able to shoot in the highest formats, you need a CF Express card. It can be a little bit expensive, but when you first got it, it's very solid and very fast, so probably a good investment. And one last thing is that keep in mind that you don't need the newest camera. If you have a camera already, it's probably the best for you. We only get new cameras because it's an easier way to create videos and films. We are a film production company, and getting a camera that has better features is just more efficient for us to create high quality videos. We are looking forward to test the camera even more. This was just the first test, so remember to subscribe. There will be more videos in the future. And in just a couple of days, we're going to release a new video about the most powerful film lamp we ever used. We're going to light up a whole forest with this lamp. It's going to be interesting. So in some days, stay tuned. Yeah, I see you soon. Ha det bra, and thanks for watching. Since life is moving on and so is the technology, I thought I had to buy a new camera. So this time, my new friend is the Panasonic GH4 with a speed booster and the Sigma 18 to 35mm with aperture 1.8. This is going to be exciting.